All right. Thanks everybody. I'm just going to. So I think Vikas has covered a lot of the core fundamentals of the CESR pathway, which is applicable even to a non-CCT specialty CESR. Okay. And what I'm going to talk about and focus on is the specialty CESR, or what we call as a non-CCT specialty route. Okay. So when you're applying for CESR, what you need to do first is to go through the specialty specific guidance and look at the GMC guidance of where your specialty falls in. All right. Whether that is a CCT specialty CESR or a non-CCT specialty CESR. And pediatric intensive care medicine is a non-CCT specialty CESR, which means that you CESR only in PICU, because normally when grid trainees train in PICU, they do pediatrics and then they do PICU training. So they get a CCT in both general peds and they get PICU. Okay. What non-CCT specialty means that basically you're getting in that specialty only. So at the moment now, because with my successful PICU CESR, I am on the specialty CESR, on the specialty registry for only PICU, not for pediatrics. So that's something that we need to understand very clearly. And you need to look at the GMC website and see where your specialty falls in, whether it's specialty or non-CCT specialty. Okay, so that's the first thing. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'll just take you through my journey. And I think it's important just for people to understand why we are sharing our journey. Because it makes sense when we show our application process, right? And each of you can relate to what you want to share as your evidence based on your experience, right? And it may be that you don't need to, you don't have to share everything. Like what I'm going to show you, I didn't share all my pediatric intensive care experience as evidence, and I'll tell you exactly why. Okay. So my sort of training pathway, essentially, I did as Jas mentioned, I did my pediatric training itself in Qatar, and I had done 18 months of pediatric critical care fellowship in Doha. Okay. And then I did 2 years in Vancouver, Canada. I cleared the Royal Canadian College Pediatric Critical Care Board exam. And then I did 18 months of pediatric intensive care medicine fellowship. So basically, North Americans call it pediatric critical care. In the UK, we call it pediatric intensive care. So it's basically interchangeable, all right? That's just for people who are not PICU related. Okay. And then what I did was I applied for CESR in non-CCT specialty in pediatric intensive care medicine. Okay. And my evidence was submitted from Canada and the UK. I did not submit evidence from Qatar. Okay. Because that would be a third institution. It was more than 5 years of what was needed. And C, my program, the pediatric critical care aspect of it was not a very structured program, which is why I ended up going to Vancouver. However, my pediatric training or my residency was a very well-structured program. I had lots and lots of evidence for my residency. Okay. But apart from some of the basic certificates, like for example, evidence-based medicine workshop or research methodology workshop, that sort of stuff, which I had done very early on in my residency, I had not kept. And those were all certificates, right? Those were not that was not any evidence which needed verification, if that makes sense. And it's very important to understand your certificates do not need to be verified from wherever they are. It's a certificate, okay? So essentially from Qatar, I did not submit any evidence. So I didn't have a verification form. So I didn't have a verifier, or I did not have a pro forma for my evidence from Doha. Okay, so everything was focused around Canada and the UK. All right. So the time that I had taken essentially to collect, consolidate, and upload my evidence, since the decision that I had taken that, okay, I am going down the CESR pathway, and this is what I want to do, it took me about 2 years. And one of the reasons why it took me 2 years was because I had identified that I needed to complete some extra rotations, and that being mainly anesthesia. which is a core part of pediatric intensive care medicine training here in the UK. So in the UK, we've got to do 6 months of anesthesia, whereas in North America, they do only 2 months. I know in Australia they do 6 months to a year, so it's different from different places. But for CESR purposes, it's very clearly mentioned in the curriculum that you have to do at least 6 months of anesthesia. So that's what took me extra time to complete. Okay. Now, each of you, for some of you might have your evidence, already accumulated. It's all about consolidation, putting into PDFs and sort of, organizing and then maybe uploading it. So you could be anywhere in that pathway from maybe you need 6 months to 1 year, 2 years, or maybe even 3 years. Okay. If you haven't accumulated the evidence that needs to be submitted. Okay. So this time period of how long you need to do your CESR, when people ask me this question, the only person who can answer that question is yourself. Okay. And that's important, right? But the key thing is, if you've decided to embark on a CESR route, what you need to do is to commit and to make sure you hold yourself accountable and responsible to try and meet that deadline. Okay. So in terms of my sort of timelines, and why I'm putting these timelines is because I think it's important to put this time perspective, yeah, for people who consider CESR versus training. Okay. So it took me 2 years to get my evidence and submit it. Okay. And it took, so when I submitted, so if you look at the GMC website, they sort of say 8 months to 12 months to get your outcome. Majority of the people currently, it's been taking them about, it usually takes them about anywhere between 12 to 16 months to get an outcome from their initial submission. Okay. And your initial submission is when you actually get all your evidence, you've uploaded it, and you've hit the submit button for the first time. And that's when you pay your money. Okay. So that is initial CESR submission. And for me, that was on the 14th of August in 2022. Now, usually, so on an average, it takes about 2 months for the GMCs to come back with their first feedback. Yeah. And when you give the first feedback, they will give you, a list of things that they would make suggestions, what they may feel as deficiencies, or changes to your file nomenclature, or maybe your redaction. It can be a lot of things that they can send you, or they might be very minimal things to change as well. So it depends on how thorough your submission process was. And once they give you that feedback, you've got 60 days to respond, to give your final submission. Yeah. And essentially, if you have any sort of deficiencies in terms of rotations, or sort of evidence that is lacking, that you use that time to gather that evidence before your final submission. And after the final submission date, you cannot submit any more further evidence. And that's important to understand. Okay. And why I'm telling you this is that sometimes if you're waiting for, say, a lot of people, they might wait for a specific, say, like an audit or a re-audit or something, and they don't want to hit submit until they've done that. Now, what I'd suggest is actually go ahead and hit submit if you know you are going to get it done before, say 4 months from your submission date. Yeah. Because you do get 2 months after the first feedback. So you had 2 months for GMCs to get back to you, and then you're getting another 2 months basically until your final submission. So that's about 4 months time, where if you can finish things, then you're actually saving time from, pressing the go button, which saves time to get an outcome sooner. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So that's important to understand. And once you submit your application, that's a final application, then they'll reply back to you saying that so if you look at that, from when I've done my final submission, it's taken a month for GMC to come back and tell me that my application has been accepted. Part of it is also because it was around Christmas and New Year. And then what they will do is to send it, parts of your evidence, to your verifiers, which is called the primary source verification. Okay. So it took a month from the application being accepted to then be sent to the verifiers. And then, another month when the verification process was completed. And then I was told that my application is on a wait list for about 4 months. The average wait list to go to the college is about 4 months, okay, with the number of applications. And the rate limiting step is actually the lack of assessors, is what the college is what GMC is saying. Okay. So, and once it goes to the college, for me, in this case, it was in June 27th. What GMC will tell you is that they have 3 months to give you an outcome. Okay. So 3 months is when they say they should give you an outcome from once it's gone to the college. So luckily for me, I was quite lucky that I got my outcome within 2 months of it going to the college. Okay, so in total, my journey from submission to getting an outcome took about a year, which is actually pretty good for current standards, which I didn't expect that would happen so quickly from going to the college. Now, what I want to sort of start now is before I go and show you what I have done and how I organize myself, I want to just give you a few top tips, okay? Now, the first thing is to commit yourself to your target and hold yourself accountable, right? Because that's a key thing about CESR. When you get into training, you will be under a deanery, there will be pressure from your colleagues and from your supervisors to sort of, hit your ARCP targets. It's CESR, nobody, all right? You've got to commit yourself. Now, if you're doing non-CCT specialty CESR, please, please, please first check whether you're eligible. And what I mean by eligibility is you have to have 6 months of training outside the UK or have a specialist qualification. Now, that's 6 months of training need not be in your specialty. Now, this is very, very specific to each subspecialty. Why I'm saying that? For PICU, even 6 months might not be enough. Okay. What I know is that they may ask for more, up to a year even in PICU. Okay, essentially, I don't know how to say this, but in subspecialty CESR, it's not very standardized in terms of the requirements. It can vary a lot based on the scientific advisory committee, who are called the ISAC for each specialty. Okay, so part of that, why I'm saying this is because you need to discuss with your ISAC, okay, in writing, about your specialty specific requirements and your queries, okay? And before you do that, what you need to know thoroughly is to actually know your curriculum, the latest version, and please, please read the subspecialty specific guidance, yeah? When I know in the group, yeah, the group is available and it's very easy to ask questions, but it's quite evident from, some of the questions being asked that people actually haven't actually gone through the guidance. And see, at the end of the day, what are we trying to get a CESR for? Right? We're all trying to get a CESR to become a consultant. Okay. And it shows responsibility. Actually, if we haven't gone through the key document that they're asking us to go through, it shows lack of preparedness from our side. So the guidance is there for that. So a lot of things, like as in what to redact, what not to redact. Okay. So all that, some of this is very, very clear. It's out there. Okay. And what sort of evidence? Again, if you look at the GMC, once you create your account and you log in, and I'll show you that, it'll show you what sort of evidence is acceptable. Okay, so please go through the curriculum. And what is, when people ask how many CBDs or what sort of procedures, if you listen to any sort of GMC or college workshop, RCPCH workshop for CESR, they'll say it's not about the quantity, it's always about the quality. However, quantity also matters, right? And what I'd suggest is just talk to your subspecialty colleagues who are doing grid training. For example, if you're doing PICU CESR, ask a PICU grid training and say, ballpark, how many do they submit? Because the expectation from the ISAC, yeah, who look at your evidence, they're going to tag it against a grid training program. What they want to see is, are you safe enough to become a consultant? Have you done enough training equatable to a grid trainee in the UK? And that's what they're trying to match with equivalence, okay? And you know, it's a funny thing. The program is actually, the CESR is a pathway meant to sort of grant equivalence to the training done outside of the UK. However, the sort of equivalence that they're looking for is actually matching the UK program, which is a bit, you know, for example, when I trained in Canada, we didn't have to do workplace assessments. Yeah, we had 3 months, every 3 months, I had consultants giving me my appraisals, you know, logbooks, and that was an online software. And we had procedure logs, but we didn't have workplace assessment. And in the end, we had to give an exam and prepare for it. Okay, so there was a board exam, right? However, when I submitted my evidence, GMC was still asking me, where is my workplace assessments from Canada? So I actually, all my workplace assessments came from the UK, not from Canada. But what I'm trying to say is that there is an expectation to match it to the UK, if that makes sense. All right. Now, once you're eligible, if you can find a buddy together on your journey, that's brilliant, because you can hold each other accountable. And I had a buddy like this. Okay, she was doing peds endocrinology and I was doing PICU. We are very good friends, we were neighbors, and we used to ensure that, you know, and we sort of submitted within like about a few weeks time frame gap. Okay, and what you need to do is to identify colleagues within your current and previous departments, wherever you're supporting evidence from, who will support your application. You know, I mean, this has to be a given, right? Like, you need to have people who you can trust, who will verify your evidence, and then people who will be your referees as well. Yeah. And you know, the referees, like Vakas mentioned earlier, one has to be a clinical lead, one at a directorate level. And you know, people have been asking questions about structured reports. The structured report is done by them, it's not done by you. So you can't, you can see the sort of template for it, what GMC might send them as an empty template, but it is a lot of work for them. It's about 4 to 5 pages of documentation that they have to do, and it is detailed. Okay, it is a lot of work. So you need to give people notification in advance, tell them that you're doing a CESR, tell them that you need their help, and ask in advance, so that they would be prepared. And there is guidance on the GMC website for the referees. So when you email them or contact them saying that, can you please be my referee, and say, put this, you know, copy paste or put a screenshot of what the requirements are and say, this is what is expected. Can you please help? Okay. Now, I've talked to you about the specialty specific guidance and generic guidance. Okay. And what you need to then do is to sort of identify, you know, after looking at the curriculum, what are the key deficiencies in your evidence portfolio? Yeah. For example, if it's an incomplete rotation, an area of training, whether it is workplace assessments, and you make a plan for completion from there. Yeah. You discuss with the ISAC in writing about your specific, because I can tell you, in PICU until last year, there was no specific standardized structure. It all depended on who was sitting at the CSAC and, you know, what they thought. You know, anesthesia was not clear. Some said you had to do adult, some said you had to do ped, you know, you could do peds, some said you could do ad hoc days. But now it's been structured. You have to do, for example, anesthesia as a block. You can't do it as ad hoc days. So they've made it more structured now. So you ask your ISAC and write to them and say, you know, is there any guidance specifically, for example, neurology? What is, you know, if there are any specific requirements from the ISAC per se. And, you know, surprisingly, some ISAC, you know, programs and some specialties, actually the ISAC or the CSAC, CSAC is the chair of the Scientific Advisory Committee, might not be very well versed with the CESR process, because they probably don't have a lot of these applicants. And I think you have to take some extra effort to tell them what exactly is the CESR process, which can make it a bit tricky. Okay. So, but definitely do discuss in writing with corresponding via email, so that you have it as documentation. Okay. And then once you got all this information, you've identified your deficiencies, you've discussed with your ISAC, then you create your CESR roadmap, yeah, with your goals and deadlines. It is always worth it to pay for a Kaizen e-portfolio. Okay. It helps make a lot of things easier in terms of doing your workplace assessments, sort of sending MSF, getting in, you know, supervising trainees and logging that, teaching and all that. You need to do your annual appraisals every year. GMC will ask you, where are your annual appraisals for this year, this year, this year? Okay, so for the last 5 years, you got to have your completed annual appraisals. You need to have patient feedback at least once. Okay, and that's a minimum of about 15 patient feedbacks, if I remember ballpark estimate figures. And you could use a PICC tool. It's a very easy tool that if you have got guys in that you could pay extra for, and you could just send parents a barcode or ask your staff. Okay, and then you need to have MSFs. And ideally, if you could get an MSF every 18 months to 2 years, that's fantastic. So you could do at least 2 to 3 MSF in the last 5 years. You need to make sure, so have an Excel sheet, yeah, Excel sheet for your CPD diary, an Excel sheet for your, with another tab for what teaching you've done, and a logbook if you haven't maintained a logbook so far. Okay, if you're going to collect evidence prospectively, this is the sort of process, organizational process you need to be thinking about. Okay. Vikas has talked a lot about redaction. And I think a lot of people have asked. I would insist, pay the money for Adobe. It is worth it. Okay, what you don't want is, because incorrect redaction where patient information is still visible is a big issue, and that will be a comment in your application process, which the assessors from the college can see. Okay, and if there are a lot of areas where redaction was insufficient or incomplete, then they would ask you to do a course on information governance and data protection. GMC will specifically say that. Okay, and I know people who have, so that's very important. All right, so if you're doing redaction, that's probably the one thing you should not do when you're dead tired and falling asleep. Okay, and it can be dead boring. You could compile all your redaction stuff, documents towards the end, and then take a Adobe subscription for a couple of months and then do it. But you need to think about whether you've got the energy and drive to just keep editing and redacting PDFs. So that's completely up to you. You could save money that way as well. I ended up paying for a whole year, which I didn't need. So you could compile everything towards the end. The last top tip I want to say is, do not forget to cross-reference. Yeah, you can have many documents that can be linked to multiple areas, and I'll show you how you do that. Okay, so that's all from my slides. What I'm going to do is to just show you how I have organized my CESR documents. Okay, so my CESR is on my Dropbox. Okay, so the key thing what I want to show you is for non-CCT subspecialty CESR, you're going to be submitting evidence on these 5 domains. Yeah, just ignore all the other folders. I want you to look at domain 1 to domain 5. Yeah, so that's exactly how it's in the GMC website. Okay, so your what I would like, and I would completely agree with Vikas. Unless and until you don't log in, create an account, and you don't look at it, the tabs them yourself, you're not going to commit to start. It is going to be hard, because only then you will get an idea. Otherwise, you're completely doing this blind without knowing what to do. So what I did is I created my account, created folders for each of the domains. And then what I did was I made, so domain 1 has further subclassifications. Yeah, it's got 8 tabs when you look at the GMC website, when you where you upload your evidence. So if you take CV, then what I did is I just sort of put the GMC guide on what, sorry, that's my, there you go. So I just put a screenshot of what GMC said I can submit. Okay, so for each of these, what you could do is to just, say for assessment and appraisals. Yeah, so what you could do is to see what is the evidence recommended. This is from the GMC website, and you could put this in the folder so that you don't have to keep going online to see what GMC is recommending and asking you to put. It's basically just trying to be structured and organized so that it saves you time. The other thing that can be helpful, which is what I would really recommend is actually for those who don't have is to have a master sheet. Okay. So this is an Excel sheet that's basically combined everything from the GMC website, which my buddy, my CESR buddy had Ruchi, Dr. Ruchi Nadar. She's a peds and she's a consultant in peds endocrinology at Birmingham Children's. She made this fantastic Excel sheet, okay, where she's compiled all the domains. Yeah. So domain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with its the summary of what evidence. Yeah. So basically when I showed you in domain 1, your CV qualification, your specialist qualifications, the assessments, and then your curriculum competencies, and then she's put what evidence can be submitted. Yeah. And then what each of you could do is to use an Excel sheet like this as a master template. Yeah. So this is like giving you a broad bird's eye view of your CESR application. Okay. And then you can just fill in, okay, this is what I have and what is pending. So you have, it's otherwise very difficult to know what you have, what you need to do, and what is uploaded. Okay. So if you've got something like this, it is extremely useful because it gives you a complete, helicopter view and situational awareness of where you are with your CESR application. Okay. And we could share this in the group. I think we have previously shared this in the group. Okay. So that is that. I'm just going to go back. Okay. So if you go to each of these, yeah, and then I'm going to say take assessments and appraisals. Yeah. So the way you name your file also matters. It easily makes it visible for yourself, first of all, B, for the GMC crew, and C, for your verifier as well. Okay. So my evidence, as I told, was from Vancouver and from Birmingham. So if you see, most of all my files have either got Birmingham or they start with Birmingham or Vancouver. Okay. And then I've also put in, for example, like if you saw Wakas, even he had put into 7, into 8. Yeah. So you put the number and then what that document is. Okay. And believe me, the key thing is how you name this file. You copy it by copy pasting that exact title to the proforma, to the uploading for website, right? You don't type it again. You copy paste it exactly as is. Because if there is a discrepancy in the name, GMC will come back to you with that. You'll have to change it. Okay. And you've got to match even the page numbers and stuff. And please try and compile whatever you can. For example, if you look at my CBDs, all my um, workplace assessments, I just put them all together into one. You don't have to put them as 5 CBDs or 3 hats or whatever. These are all workplace assessments. You want to put them together, you put them together. That's absolutely fine. It minimizes the number of uploads, or so that's completely up to you. But don't put it as individual to increase the number of files. Okay. If your department has got appraisals, a platform where they do periodic appraisals, that has a lot of value. And what is important is contemporaneous appraisals. So that appraisals that happens, at the time. So not retrospective. Retrospective appraisals where you've done your training and then you're going back to your program director and asking, oh, can you give me an appraisal form for last year? Okay, and then trying to do it retrospectively with the current date does not hold value. It has to be the date for then. So it has to have happened then to have proper value for an appraisal. That makes sense. If you don't have that evidence, do it prospectively. Okay, so that's something. Curriculum competencies, posts and duties. So these are basically the tabs as is over there. I'm not going to go into each of these. What I'll suggest also, I'll show you is also, for example, audit and for research, okay? So what I did was, if you've done a lot of research and audit, what I would suggest is to have a little, like a Word document or a PDF, or you can convert into PDF, where you put the gist of what you've done and your role in that. Okay, so this was guidelines audit and quality improvement project that I've been involved at Birmingham Children's. So essentially, I've sort of put in what I have done project and what my role was. Okay, so this is like a quick 2-page snapshot for anybody to, they don't want to go in through pages and pages of, you need to make their life easy. And if you make their life easy, your assessments come out quicker as well. Okay. And the same thing I had done for my teaching as well. I can show you that. Let me just see. All right, I'm trying to find out where so this is kind of like a teaching timetable that I've sort of organized, that because I was the education co-lead, these are the timetables that I used to run. So that's something that I have put. So wherever you can summarize and put things together, try and do it that way. And again, as Vakas and Nadia mentioned, feedback, if you've done a study day, you need to, so if you look at most of the study days that I've done, everything needs to have a feedback. Okay. It can't be just PowerPoint slides, and just minimize your number of PowerPoint slides that you put in. You don't have to, that's not what they're looking for. Okay. And in terms of what naming the files, and I'll show you what I've done with that. Okay. So this is basically just a file that I have put, where I've copy pasted the titles of my files. Okay. And how I've named them for each of the folders. Okay. So what I want to show you is where I've cross-referenced, because that was a question that somebody had asked. Okay. So if you look at this one, there you go, number 5 in research. So so that's how you can write that you've cross-referenced something. Okay. Like for example, your MSF. Yeah. So your MSF is something that you can cross-reference in a lot of places. Let's say I can show you. There you go. Okay. So if you look at number 12, yeah. So I've done my MSF, then I said cross-referenced. So I've put the file name, then I've said cross-referenced and uploaded in appraisal section in domain 1. That is how you cross-reference it. Okay. Yeah. And the same thing, number 11 is similar. If you look at it, anonymize individual consultant feedback, cross-reference and uploaded in teaching and training section of domain 1. Hope that makes sense. Yeah. Now, some of this won't make sense if you've actually not opened the account and actually looked at how things are arranged. So what I would suggest is, if you've never done this before and looked online, once you start doing it, come back to the recording of these sessions, and then that will make more sense. Okay. Again, cross-reference, there you go. And you can cross-reference to a whole document, you can cross-reference to pages. Okay. Like for example, here, maintaining trust, I've cross-referenced pages 1, 4, 8, 13 to 15. Okay. And I specified it's uploaded in appraisal section domain 1. Okay. So this is how essentially I've tried to name my files when I've uploaded it. And if you see, until the hyphen is the file name, what is written after that is, when you upload a file, they'll ask you for a description. It is the description bit. So the cross-reference I have mentioned, not in the file name, I have mentioned in the description bit. Okay, hope that's clear. Yeah, so for people doing, so one thing that's important is if you're doing prospective evidence is to collect patient lists. Yeah. And I would encourage all of you, I think all of us have patient lists, try and keep it anonymized, redacted, and get it uploaded. And if you have your own patient list, that makes more credibility where you have your own writing and all that. You don't have to then transcribe it onto an Excel sheet, if that makes sense. Okay. I'm going to stop here because it's already 4:25, and so that we can take some questions, if that helps, unless anybody wants to see anything specifically.
I think that's really good timing, Fajish, because there are some questions in the chat that we can answer. And thanks both of you guys for answering them kind of as they've come up for some of them. So I think we've managed to clear through some. And then we can go to the kind of proper panel. We've got like half an hour for panel Q&A, and with one of the senior leads representatives from the GMC going to join us. She's ready in the webinar now, so that's everyone is here. But I wondered if maybe we could just spend 5 minutes before we go to the general Q&A on kind of speciality, like specific PICU and kind of subspecialty things that might be more relevant for Fajish, and then kind of open the floor for, start the panel proper. What do you think, Fajish?
Sure, absolutely.
Or alternatively, we could just go and take all the questions all together. But having said that, I'm not sure that there's like specific to subspecialty. I think one of the ones that I picked out is about was a question about NICU and General Paediatrics CESR, if you have to do General Paediatrics first. But I think I've answered that in the chat. So I don't know if I think it was who asked that? I can't remember now. But I answered it in the chat. So if that's answered a question, then that's great. And if not, could you just put it back in the chat? There was one question about from Zahid for a non-CCT CESR. Is 6 months training from home country in the subspecialty? And he was asking about distance learning courses. Are they okay from recognized institutions? Fajish, you've answered saying you thought that the GMC didn't recognize those, but I wonder if Waqas, if you know any more, or else we can hold that.
I think what we had is in the previous webinar, we've had someone who's actually a couple of people who've actually called and contacted GMC directly, and distance learning was not counted towards that. And even if there is eligibility with 6 months, you need to talk to the ISAC and see what they count as eligibility as well. I can tell you from personal experience that I know people who have done 6 months, but not done what the ISAC wanted them to do. So that's a bit tricky.
Okay. Hopefully that answers. We can come back to that. One question about from Farhana about how do you triangulate evidence, but I think maybe you need a bit more clarification, or does that make sense as a question standalone? I think that was related to cross-referencing. Farhana, if you could just clarify that in the chat if we didn't answer, if it isn't related to cross-referencing. What is ISAC Waqas? I could probably answer that, or maybe maybe if panel or Fajish has.
No, yeah, please do.
I've put a link in the group. So these things are all available on the RCPCH website. Each subspecialty will have its, I can't remember what it stands for, but the Intercollegiate Specialty something committee. So
Advisory committee. Yeah.
So each subspecialty, they have a committee and they decide what are the curriculum items for PEM, that's my specialty, for PICU, for NICU, and that's all on the RCPCH website. So if you Google RCPCH and ISAC plus NICU or ISAC plus PICU, or I put the PICU one and the community peds one, I've put them here in the chat for you guys, but it's all there on the RCPCH website. And it's all the contact names and the email addresses for those committee members. So the trainee rep is a good person to start with because they're like you. And then you can go, to the kind of the the consultant, and they might be more busy, they might not respond so quickly, but all their details are available on the website for RCPCH, and choose the one for your speciality. Anything to add?
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and what I'd suggest is to contact your ISAC earlier on,
Before
so that
you
you can
start it even.
Yes, I mean, as you're embarking itself, it's worth just contacting the ISAC and saying, because some programs have structured templates for their CESR process, some may not. Because I know one subspecialty where the CSAC thought that your evidence had to be from abroad. You can't submit any UK evidence. That was their sort of concept of CESR. You see what I mean? So it all depends on the ISAC's familiarity and how many people apply. So it's worth, actually, what I would suggest is to go into the GMC website and actually look at how many people actually apply from your specialty or have applied previously in your specialty, and seeing the success rates, because that'll give you a very good idea whether it's people have done it before. If people have done it, how many have actually succeeded? Okay, that does not mean that, even if people have not succeeded, if you've got all the boxes ticked, yeah. So the reason why people have not succeeded is probably they haven't met the requirements from the ISAC, which is why you talk to the ISAC and find out what is it that they need, or what are their expectations.
Yeah. And I guess it would be interesting to know if there are really significant differences between ISACs, or they're asking for things that are impossible to achieve, then potentially that could be something that could be addressed and advocated for, kind of more equity across the different ones. But that isn't going to be solved quickly, obviously, but it's worth, like, we can advocate on your behalf as an organization if you notice that things seem unequitable.